Hey guys, I'm Kyle Dermay and I'm a Uhaul hitch professional. Installing a trailer hitch on your Chevy Corvette can lead to some amazing adventures, whether that's biking, camping, or even towing a Uhaul trailer just about anywhere in North America. Today we're going to be installing a Uhaul exclusive custom hitch designed by one of our lead senior engineers, Mr. Ed Vitruba, here at the Uhaul Tech Center in Tempe, Arizona. Let's go ahead and break down that install. You'll need the tools seen here to complete this installation. All right, to get this install started, we're going to remove the lower fascia panel. To do that, we're going to start by removing each of the red reflector lenses on each side. We're going to use a small trim panel removal tool to do that. And we'll repeat that process on the other side. All right, next we're going to remove these vents on each side. You're going to start by popping it out at the bottom. Take your trim panel tool and get it started. I like to use my finger and hold it. Just kind of slowly work your way up this panel, popping it out as you go. And now we're going to repeat that process on the passenger side. Our next step is going to be to remove 6 10mm bolts. We've got one here, here, 2 behind the license plate, and 2 on the other side. We'll start by removing our license plate bolts here at the top. After removing the 6 Hess screws from the top of the fascia panel, we're going to move down and remove 2 near the exhaust. All right, now we're going to remove 10 fasteners. We've got 10 9/32 hex nuts down here at the bottom. We've got 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 5. Now here on the passenger side, we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now with all of our fasteners removed, we're ready to remove this complete lower fascia panel. It's held in by some clips along the top edge near this line. It's also got a couple of clips near the bottom. So we're going to start by popping those out first down at the bottom. Start it and do the other side. And then we're just going to slowly work our way along this top edge to remove that fascia completely. And we can set it off to the side. All right, now that we've got our fascia off, we're gonna go ahead and remove 4 10mm bolts holding on our rear energy absorber for the bumper. All right, before we remove our rear energy absorber, we actually have a small electrical connector here held onto it by a clip. So we're gonna use a plastic trim tool to go ahead and pop that clip out of place. Now we're ready to pull our rear energy absorber off. We can start by gently pulling back. Towards the center, we've got a couple of clips that if we gently pull on the upper fascia, we can get those out. All right, so now we're gonna lower our exhaust by removing 4 bolts from these rear hangers using a 13mm socket. Okay, so now we're gonna install in our receiver tube in place. We're gonna temporarily clamp it into place here in the center of our bumper support beam. We've gone ahead and we've marked the center line of our bumper support beam here, and we've also marked the center of our receiver tube. By taking some vice grip C-clamps, we were able to drop those down in between the exhaust, and then we can come up, put our receiver tube in place, and clamp it temporarily so that we can do some final measurements. We centered it in between this bumper support beam. We also measured the distance to the center of the bottom holes at 1 3/16 of an inch. So you want to measure from the right side or the passenger side, as well as from the driver's side. We even went as far as to use a small torpedo level to make sure that it was perfectly straight on both sides so that when we drill our holes, we're going to be nice and perpendicular so that we get a nice straight shot right into our bumper support beam, which is going to be behind this once it gets installed. All right, so now that we've got our receiver assembly in place, we're gonna use it as a template to drill the 4 holes needed to install this receiver. We're gonna start with a 3/16 drill bit to get our pilot hole, and we're gonna make sure to keep this drill bit completely perpendicular to get a nice straight shot through the bumper support beam. All right, so now that we've got marks for our 4 holes, we're gonna go ahead and remove the clamp and remove the receiver assembly so that we can finish drilling our holes without accidentally moving this or nicking it. Okay, so we've got our pilot holes drilled. We're gonna go back with our 1/2-inch drill bit and drill our final hole. Always be careful, word of caution, to check the backside of whatever you're drilling through. Make sure there's no electrical, no components back there that you're gonna drill through. And also important to remind you that you are drilling through 2 metal surfaces here. So once you get through the first surface, there is the backside of this tube that we're gonna be drilling through as well. All right, so now that we've got our 4 1/2-inch holes drilled, we're ready to install our backing plate. We did find that this was a little difficult to get into position, so we found that we needed to kind of come in and finagle it through. So this really helps to get an extra set of hands, somebody to help pull down on the exhaust while you kind of weasel this thing into position. So we'll go ahead and show you how to do that now. You can see it's gonna sit just like this. All right, so we've got 4 1/2-inch diameter bolts with a 19mm head and a 19mm flange nut for the other side. We're gonna start by bringing our receiver into position and sliding in our bolt with our flat washer. This will help hold the receiver tube into place, or in place, while we match everything else up. So now we're gonna take our reinforcement plate, we're gonna put our hand in through the center exhaust, and we're gonna try to get 1 hole onto one of the 2 bolts that we previously installed, and then use our flange nut to secure it and hold it by just gently starting to thread it on. Okay, now that we have the top part of our receiver and our reinforcement plate behind it, lightly secured, we're gonna come in and we're gonna install the bottom reinforcement by installing the bolt through the bottom part of the receiver and hopefully just bringing it right through the back. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now that we've got our 4 bolts with our flange nuts in place, we're ready to torque down to manufacturer specifications. This is a 19mm socket with a 4-inch extension. The directions and instructions for the hitch will be in the link below. Okay, we've got some trimming that we need to do on our energy absorber, and the instructions need us to cut these ribs off because this is going to sit over our receiver assembly, and we need to come down a 1/4 inch. It's not an exact science. This is a little difficult because of the constraints of the space, but do your best. We're just gonna cut these ribs off as I've marked with the red marker, and then we'll come down as best we can and trim out the 1/4 inch from the grooves to give us the clearance we need. On the outer facing side of the energy absorber, we trimmed off a full 3 inches per the instructions. All right, per the instructions, we've gone ahead and removed 3 inches off the top of the energy absorber. That should give us enough clearance that when the energy absorber is reinstalled, we've got enough room to insert a pin and clip for our receiver tube. We're now gonna go ahead and reinstall it back onto the bumper support beam. Gotta kind of wiggle it in here a little bit. It's a nice tight fit. And make sure to reconnect our clip, holding our electrical connector on here. Now we're gonna go ahead and reinstall our 4 10mm fasteners to secure our energy absorber back onto the bumper support beam. All right, so we've reinstalled our energy absorber back onto the vehicle. We're now ready to make our last and final trim on the outer fascia panel. This is by far the most important cut on the vehicle because this is what you will see every time you flip up the license plate. We want to make sure we measure twice, cut once. First thing we did was take a center mark with our wax marker right in the middle of the license plate frame. We then measured 5/16 from the small protrusion that comes out around the license plate. And we're using a template that we made here, and this is essentially the exact cut diagram with using two 2.5-inch hole saw with a small bridge in between, which is 2 inches wide. Overall length is 8.5 inches. This small cardboard cutout is going to be our template to get us exactly a perfect outline of the area by which we'll be trimming. So we're gonna go ahead and mark that off now. So now that we have our rough outline, we can ensure that it's straight. We could take a couple additional measurements, make sure that we're exactly centered in between. But I think we're now ready to go ahead and cut. We're gonna use a 2.5-inch hole saw for our radius edges here on the end, and then we'll use the air saw for our straight lines down the middle. So now that we've trimmed our outer fascia panel, we're ready to reinstall the exhaust brackets. Make sure your 10mm bolts line up onto each side. We're gonna grab a friend to push up on the exhaust. It's a little bit heavy to do it by yourself. He'll push while I put in the two 10mm bolts. All right, we're ready for reassembly of our rear bumper fascia. It's a little tricky. Remember that you've got your camera here and you've also got a trunk button. So we're gonna bring it up right underneath. It's a little bit goofy, but once you get it started, okay, with our fascia reinstalled, we're ready to insert the 8 bolts that were holding the top side of our fascia. All right, with our 8 10mm bolts up top, now we're ready for the 10 9/32. We're gonna use our 9/32 nut driver to get those all back in down here. We've got 5 on the driver and 5 on the passenger side. All right, so one of the coolest things about this hitch is that it's got a piano hinge for our license plate holder. That's so that the license plate will actually cover up our hitch when not in use. To do that, we've got a couple of Allen nuts with a flange nut. We're gonna use the pre-existing holes on each side of the plastic nut that was used to originally hold on the license plate. Next, we're ready to attach our license plate. So again, we've got a small Allen bolt with an acorn nut for the outside. Okay, our final part of our assembly is reinstalling our reflectors. Just pop those back in. And our vents on the sides, those are gonna get popped right back in as well. With our hitch installed and the vehicle pulled on the level ground, we want to give you some important measurements for some of your hitch accessories. So this is an 1.25 inch receiver. The distance from the pinhole to the edge of the bumper was 3 inches. From the pinhole to the edge of the license plate was 6.5 inches. From the top of the receiver tube to level ground was 19 inches. These measurements should help you determine the length, rise, or drop of any of your hitch accessories. That concludes our installation. If you have any questions about the products seen here or want to schedule an installation with a Uhaul hitch professional, please visit us online at uhaulhitches.com.